Hello, I'm David. Welcome to another one of my YouTube videos. Previous videos I've done have included coping with grief, time, our cruel ruler, and domestic violence awareness. Today's topic is forgiveness. I believe there are times when we should accept the forgiveness of others, and there are also times when we shouldn't. I also believe there are times when we should ask others for forgiveness for what we've done, and there are also times when we shouldn't. I believe if I was to ask you which aspects of life are most important to you, I can imagine you'd say peace, love, happiness, growth, family, friends, friendship, all sorts of things like that. You may well think of others. What I'd like to impress upon you today is just how important forgiveness is to all of those aspects. I'll put it this way. I'll show you. Forgiveness is at the centre of all of those aspects of life. When it comes to safety, for example, if someone is committing an act of domestic violence against you or someone else, then the question is, should you forgive them? Maybe you do, and your safety and the safety of those around you is at risk. When it comes to love, a friend told me that there's a lot of compromise when it comes to love. Little things we do which annoy the other person and vice versa. I was thinking this morning actually about, I can imagine some man saying to his wife, look, I love you so much. I think it's so clever of you that you are so able to multitask, do 19 things at once. But really it annoys me, and please consider this and don't do it again. It's when I'm trying to have a serious conversation with you, and when we're making love, could you please put the mobile phone down and put your total attention onto me? Think you can do that? Thank you. Now, when it comes to peace, if we're all the time worried about should I forgive someone or should someone forgive me, but then we're hardly likely to have any peace within us. And the same with growth. I mean, how on earth can we grow when we're all the time being brought back to our past, even back to negative parts of our present, if we're thinking, oh, should I forgive or should I not? Should I forgive the other person? Should the other person forgive me? This goes on and on all the time. So I mean, how on earth can we have peace within us if we don't have that element of learning when it's appropriate to forgive and when it's not? When it comes to family, especially those people with small children, I suppose they say and do things which really annoy us, and it's a matter of thinking, okay, when he or she apologises, is that really sincere or not? What if they keep on doing it? So the family dynamics can be affected by the element of forgiveness. Should I forgive or should I not? When it comes to friends, there's an element of, okay, this friend of mine did something which really annoyed me. Now, I really like this friend of mine, but where's the boundaries here? If they're going to continue on with this sort of behaviour, should I just say, no, I'm not going to be with this friend anymore? There's other people I can choose as friends. But if I say, okay, I'll forgive them, and they're going to keep on abusing this friendship, it's quite a dilemma for us, isn't it? What about money? Now, a friend of mine loaned a lot of money to a friend of his. And he was in that situation where his friend kept on saying, I'll pay you back. I'll pay you back. But he never did. So when it comes to money, it's a matter of saying, should we forgive the other person if they're going to continually delay paying us back? So I think when money, that element with forgiveness, I think it's quite a dangerous area personally. And what about happiness? Sure, we can have a lot of happiness on the surface, but if we're in our body and our mind with all this churning up going on inside us about forgiving other people, should I forgive? Should other people forgive me? Then it's not really deep happiness, is it? I don't think so. And what about health? If all this churning up inside our brains and our souls is going on, then it impacts our physical body as well. There can be a real lot of bitterness going on. If I don't forgive other people, I could feel real bitterness towards them for the rest of my life, or vice versa. So I hope you can see just how important forgiveness is. I'm going to explain in more detail some of those aspects. National Apology Day, October 22nd, 2018, was the greatest day of my life. That was a day in which victims of institutional child sexual abuse, such as myself, were taken to Parliament House, Canberra, to see and hear the national apology to us by the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, and the opposition leader, Bill Shorten. I cried as I shook their hands and said, "Thank you so much for those wonderful speeches." I'll never forget their reaction. They held my hands firmly, shook my hands and said, "No, thank you." I still hold Scott Morrison and Bill Shorten in the highest possible esteem for how wonderful they were on that day. Meeting other survivors of sexual abuse that day, sharing stories, describing experiences, hugging each other, being there for each other was oh so special, oh so beautiful. I told them my story, how I was sexually assaulted and tortured at an institution, given medication which was so strong that I struggled to talk, and in fact I needed speech therapy for years afterwards. And I was told in no uncertain terms that if I let anyone know what happened to me at that institution, I would get sent straight back there. That time at that institution left me permanently incapacitated and my life was destroyed. What was even worse, though, was at that same institution, several years later, at the same institution where I was abused and tortured, a woman was found dead, naked, surrounded in feces. Now, if only I had the courage and the strength to speak out about what happened to me at that institution, changes would have happened. And that lady would still be alive. I'll never forgive myself for not having the courage to speak out. One survivor said how she was raped by her father Eventually, she spoke to the only person she felt she could trust, her priest. And how did the priest react? The priest made her apologise. And then the priest raped her. So, if you think she should forgive her father and the priest, and I should forgive those who tortured me, I've got a question for you. If you were the innocent victim in either of those situations, would you forgive? I don't think so. When it comes to domestic violence, no excuses should be accepted ever. No apology should be accepted ever. Perpetrators, I mean criminals, male and female, come up with all sorts of excuses, such as, I've been drinking. It's part of my culture. I've been through a hard time. You should have listened to me. You should have done what I asked. It's all your fault. I'm not normally like this. It's the first time it's happened. It won't happen again. I promise. If you leave, I'll do self-harm. I might even kill myself. So how would you feel about that? I love you so very much. Please, oh please forgive me. They are also, all of those are excuses. Excuses which should not ever be accepted. I'd like you to remember these words, which could save your life. When it comes to domestic violence and sexual abuse, no apology, no forgiveness should be accepted ever, ever, ever. Now, I wish to stress that it's not only women who are victims of sexual abuse and domestic violence, because men are victims too. I believe the media have been totally negligent, totally irresponsible, totally disgusting, and ignoring the fact that so many men are also victims of domestic violence and sexual abuse. I think it's so sad that while there has been much progress made over the last 10 years towards having support groups for female victims of sexual abuse and domestic violence, and there's no longer that stigma about speaking up, the same situation does not apply to men. There is still that stigma. There's still a reluctance to speak out. There is still that feeling as though we won't be believed. That situation must change now. About this time last year, someone knocked on my door, a man, and he saw the words I had painted on my front steps. The words, "Stop domestic violence always." He confided in me while he was crying that it's not only women who are victims of domestic violence. He said that his wife continually bashed him, called him all sorts of names as well, and then would apologise. That pattern continued on for years. Their family and their friends believed his wife's words, not his. Eventually it got too much and he chose to leave. That decision saved his life. So remember, when it comes to domestic violence and sexual abuse, men of victims too. If I was to go to a pub and said to the bartender, "I'm so sorry my grandfather swore at your great-grandfather 50 years ago," and punched him in the face, the bartender would laugh and say, "Hey, there's no need for you to apologise. You did nothing wrong, just your great-grandfather." So, I'm asking you now, why should you apologise for something and ask for forgiveness for something you didn't do? "I shouldn't apologise," you'd say, and rightly so. Now, if 100 or 200 years ago, some of our ancestors who came to this land looking for a better life attacked the local tribes, why should you and I apologise? The fact is, we shouldn't have to. It is so disgusting, so sad, that some descendants of victims 200 years ago try to make you and I feel guilty for something we didn't do. They even say, "You should feel guilty. You should pay us lots of money." They change the name of places, deny you and I access to mountains and islands that were here for millions of years before any form of humans arrived. They weaponise guilt for their own selfish ambitions and to make money. How dare they? Those who do that should ask us for forgiveness. A month ago, I overheard a conversation in which a married woman called Mary confided in her friend that she is having an affair. She said to her friend, "Promise you won't tell my husband." Now, to be honest, my first thoughts were, okay, I'll tell her husband, then Mary's friend will get all the blame. But seriously though, what Mary said put her friend in a really awkward situation. If she doesn't tell Mary's husband, Ryan, the affair could go on for a long time. And at one point, Ryan could say to Mary's friend, "You knew all about this. Why didn't you tell me? Why were you so cruel to me?" But if Mary's friend does tell Ryan, it could result in the end of her friendship with Mary. And to make it matters worse, or what could happen, Ryan could bash Mary, even kill her. And Mary's friend could think, if Mary's friend could think, if only I'd kept my big mouth shut, this would not have happened. So I've got a question for you now. What would you do if you were Mary's friend and Mary said to you, "Promise you won't tell my husband I'm having an affair"? I'll give you 20 seconds. What would you do? I wonder what your answer is. I asked my camera lady that question, and she said what she would do is she would say to Mary, she would say to Mary, "I won't promise, I won't tell your husband." That seems like the right thing to do. Very wise words. Now, I believe it's easier to forgive a stranger for what they do rather than someone you know. Because with a stranger, you don't know their history. For example, the person could drive through a red light and hit your car right at the back, causing a lot of damage to the car. Now, because it's a stranger who did that, you don't know their history. For all you know, that person could have had a medical episode. The person could have just split up with their partner, or been struggling with grief, or any sorts of, maybe another medical episode or something like that. All sorts of reasons. You don't know. But when it's someone you do know the history. For example, that person who drove through a red light and hit your car, they could have been really angry at you for some time. Maybe they've been driving recklessly. Maybe they've just been totally irresponsible. So therefore, you're less likely, I believe, to forgive the person you do know who caused that action rather than a stranger. What do you think? Now, I would say one of the most important lessons I've ever learned in life is this. It's when I make a mistake, I forgive myself. And I say to myself what I'd say to a friend who made the same mistake. You can do that too. For example, like next time you might do something like leave home with the door of the house unlocked. And you might say to yourself, oh, I am so stupid. I can't do anything right. I mean, someone could have come to the house, stolen everything, and my partner will blame me and I'll blame myself. Why did I do that? But instead, what you're going to do from now on, hint, hint, is say to yourself what you'd say to a friend who made the same mistake, which would be something like this. You'd say, hey, listen, you're in a rush. You left home with the door unlocked. Lots of people make that mistake, okay? So how about next time when you go out, just take a couple of seconds longer and make sure the door is locked. And you keep on doing that, okay? Can you do that? I think you can. See, that's what you'd say to a friend. And that's what you can say to yourself and will say to yourself from now on, next time you make a mistake, I have confidence in you. In fact, in my morning affirmations, every morning I say to myself, when I make a mistake, I'll forgive myself, and I say to myself what I say to a friend who made the same mistake. I say it every morning. That's something you can do too. So, how well have you been paying attention to this part? So what are you going to do next time you make a mistake? 1, 2, 3. That's right. You're going to forgive yourself and say to yourself what you'd say to a friend who made the same mistake. Well done. Good on you. Okay? Now, when we do something wrong or stupid and we're called out for it, it can be so embarrassing, even humiliating. However, we are able to cope with it. The shame is on a fairly shallow level and it doesn't last long. But sometimes we do things which are wrong or stupid, which aren't noticed by others. And we do get away with it. Or do we? I don't think so. Because we don't want to admit to what we did, we tend to keep the feelings of guilt to ourselves for a very long time, sometimes even to our graves. For example, you might have been really angry at someone and decided to teach them a lesson. So you put added spice in their meal. It was just meant as a harmless prank, just a bit of fun. But the result could be the person gets very sick and gets taken to hospital and is there for a week. And you think you're feeling too guilty to admit to the person or to anyone else what you did. It can be so hard. Now in my case, and I've never told this to anyone. When I was about 15 or 16, I was really angry at my mother. So I decided to, in a fit of rage or petulance, or whatever you like to call it, what I did was I took the wedding ring she'd had in a container. She'd been married for 30 years. I took her wedding ring, which meant so much to her, and I threw it in a rubbish bin. It was a stupid, irresponsible, cruel, horrible, nasty thing to do. And you may well think about the words too. I never did tell my mother about that. At one point she asked me, "Do you know what happened to my wedding ring?" And I said, "I don't know." Now if, it's a big if, I do get to heaven, and if I'm allowed, one of the first things I like to do or say is ask my mother for forgiveness for what I did. Now, when it comes to forgiving someone or asking for forgiveness, I believe it's so extremely important. What is so extremely important is how that apology is delivered. Above all, it needs to be sincere. Now, I've seen in Parliament some of the most horrible, disgusting comments and insults. Some members yell at those opposite, as they say. Some really horrible things, the most disgusting, not just attacking the person's political views, but also attacking them as people. And they go on and on with these personal insults, these personal attacks, with a smile on their faces. And after a while, the Speaker of the House says to the person who made the insults, apologise for what you've said. And the person who made the insults does apologise with zero sincerity. So the person who makes the insults goes, insult, insult, insult. And then they say, I apologise, with a smirk on their face. So horrible, so disgusting. That sort of behaviour isn't acceptable for children. It certainly shouldn't be acceptable in Parliament either. Now, about 6 years ago now, a former Member of Parliament had coffee with me. A long coffee. Lasted about 2 hours, two and a half hours. And what that former Member of Parliament said to me really shook me. He said that the continual personal attacks on him took its toll. It wasn't just in Parliament, it was also when he was trying to have relaxing time outside Parliament hours. And the effect on him was what? He developed severe depression, and he was this close to suicide. So that sort of behaviour cannot be tolerated. So therefore, I wish to stress that if you're not sincere in asking for forgiveness, don't ask for it. And if the other person isn't sincere in asking us for forgiveness, don't grant it. Sincerity and forgiveness should be at one with each other, like this. Okay? Now, when the Bondi Beach massacre happened last year, many people, such as you and I, were in a state of shock. However, considering the continual anti-Jewish protests, hateful protests, and the continual destruction of Jewish property for over 2 years, ever since the massacre at a music festival in Israel 2 years prior, the Bondi Beach massacre was inevitable. Inevitable. I will not ever forgive the government for dismissing, for ignoring all the anti-Jewish warning signs. Now, if the government hadn't ignored and dismissed the oh so clear warning signs, the protests and the marches calling for Jewish blood and the destruction of Jewish property, and taken action, the Bondi Beach massacre would not have happened. I'll repeat that last paragraph. If the government hadn't ignored and dismissed the oh so clear warning signs, the protests and marches calling for Jewish blood and the destruction of Jewish property, and taken action, the Bondi Beach massacre would not have happened. If you believe in God, in heaven and or an afterlife, it's likely that when you die or are approaching death, there will be a fear, a degree of guilt, and asking for forgiveness for some of what you've said and done. You might have got away with some things when you're alive, but now you're going to be held accountable. If that thought seems scary for you now, you can make it less so. How, you might say? Well, I've got some ideas for you. 1, by letting everyone see and feel your kindness. 2, by letting loved ones know how much you do love them. You can even do that today. 3, by asking for forgiveness for mistakes you've made. 4, by seeing goodness in others and telling them that you can see their goodness. And 5, by making such a positive impact on others that your legacy will last for generations. You can do that. Now, I can understand if you have been triggered or disturbed or upset by some of what I've said here today, by some of this video. Please remember you're not alone. Reach out for support, whether it be from family members or friends or social workers or counsellors. And you can also contact me. Now, if you have any questions or comments, please contact me, okay? To do that, see my contact details in the bio below. Thank you.